Kingdom Characteristics Studies. We started last week to look at Isaiah chapter 2 a little bit. I think we read a couple of verses. I think what I'll do today just trying to decide how far. I think I'll just read Isaiah 2, 1 through 4, and then I think I'm going to skip over to Isaiah chapter 11 and read Isaiah 11, 1 through 10, and then Isaiah chapter 65. I'm going to read a little bit as well, beginning in verse 17 and reading to the end of that chapter. Okay? So Isaiah 65, 17 and following, Isaiah 11, 1 through 10, and Isaiah 2, 1 through 4. All right? And you keep track of how many characteristics of the millennial kingdom we have described for us here in these verses. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, Come, let us go to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Elohim, the Elohim of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. He shall judge between nations and shall rebuke many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Now over to chapter 11, verse 1. Then there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. His delight is in the fear of Yahweh, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be in the belt of his loins, and his faithfulness the belt of his waist. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. A little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young ones shall lie down together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of Yahweh, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, who shall stand as a banner to the people, for the Gentiles shall seek him, and his resting place shall be glorious. And then over to 65, beginning in verse 17. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. The former shall not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem as a rejoicing, and her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people. The voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. No more shall an infant from there live but a few days, nor an old man who has not fulfilled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit, nor shall they shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree, so shall be the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children for trouble. For they shall be the descendants of the blessed of Yahweh, and their offspring with them. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. And while they are still speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. The dust shall be the serpent's food. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, says Yahweh. All right. Now it's up to you. How many characteristics did you write down? All right, back to Isaiah 2. Let me just walk through a few that I wrote down from there. First of all, from verse 2 of chapter 2, I note that this is not a spiritual kingdom. This is an earthly kingdom. There will be actual literal mountains. There will be a temple. Yahweh's house, verse 1 says, will be built in Zion or Jerusalem. There will be nations other than the Jews, and several of these passages talk about the Gentiles. So Gentiles and Jews will be together in this kingdom. There will be a specialized worship of Yahweh. Verse 3 of Isaiah 2 talks about going up to the mountain and worshiping Yahweh in his house. Yahweh himself will be teaching. There will be learning. I love that verse. The first part of verse 4 talks about him teaching the nations and rendering judgments regarding the nations and so on. He will issue rebukes to the nations. So there will be sins and there will be problems, but Yahweh is going to render justice in those situations. And of course there will be political peace. The last part of that verse in chapter 2 talks about peace between the nations and the beating the swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks, and there will no longer be any need for learning war, because there won't be any wars left on the earth, because Yahweh will rule in peace. Okay, so what else do you see from verses 2 through 4 of Isaiah chapter 2? Anything else there?
So, maybe just a question, when it talks about for the law will go forth from Zion, the law, is that connected to you think with Matthew 5, or like what we've been going through, like kingdom law, those principles, like, or is there other places that talk about the exact laws that will be, besides like, we've run across some of that in Matthew 5, but I was just wondering if you had any other thoughts on that, or if there's other places where it'd be more detailed as to what that looks like, the law, you know?
I don't know any other than what you've already mentioned.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have pretty good grasp on that.
I don't think, no, that's why I'm asking if you.
Well, the law of Yahweh,
Right.
it's not going to be the Mosaic law.
Right.
We know that's done away with. The Mosaic law is no longer. But I suspect that there are pieces of Mosaic law that are more enduring than the law itself. And we do know from Ezekiel chapters 40 to 48 that there is going to be some kind of law system that will involve sacrifices and ceremonies in the temple. And we read from here that there's going to be teaching and there's going to be all kinds of activity that's going on on Temple Mount. And Yahweh himself, Yahweh Yeshua, is going to be involved in apparently a great deal of that. I don't know much more about the whole role of the Jews and King David
Right.
in that process. I do get the impression from Zechariah 14 that the Gentiles will offer sacrifices on Temple Mount as well. So I think there will be a pretty elaborate system of worship and all kinds of stuff going on Temple Mount. And all of the feast days, the major feast days, we know that the Feast of Tabernacles from Zechariah 14, we know that is observed in a very special way. And if people from anywhere around the world don't participate, sending delegations to Israel and to Jerusalem to celebrate that time, they will receive no rain in their part of the world. It's going to be pretty elaborate. So I guess there is quite a bit to talk about there. It's just kind of bringing it to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just curious about that. And I don't think how detailed we really know. I mean, what we know is kind of what's written, but it probably will be even more than what we have.
I'm sure it's going to be much more elaborate than what we have.
Like, and it's not for us to know right now.
Right.
Not important, but
right.
It's interesting to think about, though.
Oh, it is. It's very interesting. It's fascinating.
Look like compared to the laws we have now.
Yeah.
For people living in that day. I mean,
it's
be big.
I think, as we read through all those passages, the thing I don't see is what happens to the people of the church age and what they're going to be doing. I mean, it's talking about humanity. Those are people that aren't in perfected bodies, so they're born, either they enter the millennial kingdom or they're born in the millennial kingdom. It talks about babies, they won't die early, they'll live 100 years, which makes you...
They're still in infancy at 100 years old.
Yeah, I mean, and then I think they become responsible for their sin, and if they refuse to Christ, at least Arnold Furtenbaum says that there will be death.
Oh, there definitely will be death.
But it won't happen until after they're 100 years old.
Where was it? It talked about being accursed if they refuse to honor Yahweh, yeah.
So there is death. Well, that doesn't say anything then really about us and our resurrected bodies and what our role will be.
Well, we do know some things. I didn't read them, those passages.
Those
that talk.
passages don't tell us, and that's what I'm saying.
Well, we will reign with Christ, and
what does
we
that-
we
what
know
does that mean?
we know something about that. We know that he talks about 5 cities and 10 cities, ruling over 5 cities and 10 cities in the parable of the minas, and receiving rewards, proportionate to the degree of faithfulness that we have lived out our life here on earth. So yeah, we know a little bit.
A little bit. I guess the curiosity is, and what else? I mean,
Well, judging angels, that one still has me baffled.
Like, I don't know what that means.
I'm not sure I want to do that, but he knows what he's doing. So I mean, yeah. And I'm pretty confident to say what I'm about to say, that since Yahweh, the Spirit, or actually the Triune Godhead, it seems to me you can find verses in the New Testament that say that the entire Godhead is involved in determining giftedness for believers in this age, determining which spiritual gifts believers of this age receive. So I'm
you say this age, which age are you talking about?
church age, the age that we're in right now.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I think to extrapolate that idea forward, I suspect it's a fairly good chance or bet that we will be involved in the kingdom in some kind of activity that is in keeping with our spiritual giftedness in this age. I think that underscores the importance of believers knowing what their gifts are and seeking to develop those gifts and exercise those gifts and grow those in their ability to express and use the spiritual gifts that Yahweh has given to us. I know a lot of Christians feel very frustrated about giftedness talk because they don't know what their gifts are and they don't feel like there's any serious way of them being able to develop that and so on. I think that's a mistake. I think there are definitely ways to know and understand what your gifting is and how to pursue developing your gifts. I think I truly and firmly believe that being part of the body of Christ and other Christians who know you and know you well and affirm your areas of giftedness is by far the strongest and the clearest way of knowing what your gifts are, and the body of Christ is the place to develop them and use them. That said, I can turn it back to you guys. Any comments or questions about any of that?
I have a question in verse 4.
Yes, sir.
So it says that they'll beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Yep.
I find that a fascinating comment because the modern day weapon is not spears and swords.
Right.
So I'm going to display my ignorance here with this question. So is it possible that they get reduced down to swords and spears because of Christ's second coming, where he destroys his enemies, and there essentially is no more conventional warfare as we know it. There's no more guns and all that kind of stuff.
I think that's an excellent point that you have made, because you did make a point. and I think it was well made. I agree with you, Mark. I think that electronic warfare and electronic whatever, like air forces and all of that stuff, I think that's going to be a thing of the past. I don't believe there will be any guided missiles. I don't think there will be any GPS navigation stuff, satellite imagery. I don't think there will be any of that. I think Yahweh is going to return the earth to a very fundamental kind of existence that is very restful, will include work, but peaceful kinds of things. Obviously the plowshares and the pruning hooks, those are agricultural tools, and that's stuff, I'm familiar with. I grew up with plowshares and pruning hooks.
Well, Joel 3:10 tells us that they're to take their plowshares and beat them into
Micah,
swords.
Micah, right?
No, it's Joel 3:10.
Oh, okay. Well, Micah talks about it too.
Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears.
Oh, well,
So
that's the reverse, but that's not Millennial Kingdom.
No. What I'm saying is that in the Millennial Kingdom, he reverses
Yeah.
what they did to
I
get
got
to
you.
that point.
I'm
So
sorry, I
I would
misunderstood.
say through the tribulation and all,
Yeah.
the weak have to make these weapons
Yeah.
out of their agricultural things. In
Well-
the Millennial Kingdom, he reverses that.
Yep. And that, remember when we went through Zechariah, the latter chapters of Zechariah, Yahweh himself, with his own sword, obviously sheds blood, significant amounts of it. He comes, that's pretty clearly not metaphorical imagery there. It sounds like he conducts warfare and sheds huge amounts of blood. His robe, his garments are dripping with blood. And it's human blood, obviously. He's not killing animals. So I really do believe that what you implied there in your comment was that weaponry and military engagements and all of that is going to be a thing of the past, the sophisticated weaponry of our day and time.
Yeah, I suspect too that there's a link between this and the battle that's staged in Armageddon, because it talks about the blood coming up to the horse's bridle. Well, again, we don't use horses for warfare now.
Right.
So, I think that it might seem tenuous, but it seems like there's a connection between this passage here and those passages in the New Testament. So it kind of is one more evidence that this is actually talking about the Millennial Kingdom, which is an aftermath of all of that stuff.
Yep. I struggled for many, many years with being able to say what I just said about it's always been, well, if we've advanced so far as we have in military weaponry and, these incredible Air Force jets that can do what they can do and these cruise missiles and all of the, atomic bombs and all this kind of stuff. How can any of this discussion about warfare with horses and swords even be possible? It must be symbolic, and yet it doesn't sound symbolic, or you don't read it as symbolic. So I struggled for years with being able to freely say, I think all that's going to be gone. I think Yahweh's just going to remove that.
I was wondering, how do you harmonize verse 4, the nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war, with Revelation 20, verse 7 and 8. It says, when the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the war.
Yeah, well,
Harmonize that.
what does the second part of verse 4 of Isaiah 2 actually say? Huh?
Like, who do they learn war from?
No.
Or what are you talking about?
What does it actually say they are doing? Or they're not going to do?
Not lift up sword
Against,
nation.
right? And then also
And never again will they learn war.
learn war. What does that mean?
I don't know. That they wouldn't war.
Well, what do you think? What do you think West Point is? It's a war college. They learn war at West Point. They study warfare. That's what they do. And there will never be any of that anymore. They're never going to have to learn war.
I think in Revelation 20, the passage you're talking about, that is an uprising against Yeshua.
Yeah, that's not nation against
It's not
nation.
nation against nation. It's all these people that reject,
That's
even after this.
Satan
great-
leading his final rebellion
This
against
is the
Yahweh
final
Yeshua.
rebellion of man against God.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Jesus puts a quick end to it.
Yeah.
It just ends.
It's not the same thing as what I think the answer to your question, they're not talking about the same things.
Okay.
Yeah. Good point. Good stuff. You're so sharp on that stuff. All right. Excellent. Excellent. What else? We've only talked about Isaiah 2. We haven't talked at all about 9 or 65. I mean 11 or 65. And we completely skipped over 9, which is also a passage has information about the Millennial Kingdom as well. But let's go on. Let's keep going. Come on now. Can't quit yet.
Well, obviously, there's tremendous peace,
Yeah.
even amongst wildlife. I mean, I
Yeah.
cannot imagine lions, tigers eating oats, eating hay and straw. That just doesn't that doesn't make any sense because they're carnivores. And all of a sudden, they're not carnivores anymore. So it goes back to the idyllic times of Genesis, of the creation. Before there were carnivores, before there was cruelty between even animals. So, it's interesting.
It's very interesting.
And the peace, I mean, just tremendous. A baby, sitting by a cobra's.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite verses in the Bible. I don't care if they don't bite anymore. If they still look the way they look, I still don't want my kid playing with her.
Or sticking an arm down the den, where the snake is. I mean,
Apparently, they're no longer poisonous.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're not an issue.
I say, what a wonderful age to be a parent.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, think about that. Yeah. You don't have to worry about your kid. No worries. Huh. Well, I like that.
So we're talking about the lion shall eat straw, and then in chapter 65, right under that, dust shall be the serpent's food.
What was the last thing you said?
Dust shall be the serpent's food.
Dust, yeah. I noticed that too, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means.
Is it part of the curse?
I don't know. I read that the other day. I was trying to spend a little time preparing for the class, and I read that phrase, and I remember thinking about it for as long as I could think about it, and then something distracted me, but I never came to any conclusions that I can recall.
So I think it is related to the curse, because in Genesis 3:14, so Yahweh said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust all of the days of your life.
Right.
So it's Yahweh staying true to his word that.
Yeah, but what about the Millennial Kingdom when that is their food?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily saying that it's their food.
Oh, well, what do you think it's saying?
I think it's saying, it's the same thing that 3:14 is saying here. And the fact that when he said all of the days of your life, that means that curse still applies even in the Millennial Kingdom. because he
Oh,
said
on the
all of the
serpent.
days of your
Oh,
life on the serpent.
interesting. That's an interesting take. You know, I've had this expression, I don't remember where I picked it up, but I've had this expression that I say when I don't use it anymore, but when I was, to put somebody down, and it would be, oh, just go eat dirt, was the expression. So, yeah, maybe that's what this is. That they're just going to eat dirt. Where is that verse? What's that?
You mean the Isaiah 65 or the Genesis?
The one where the snakes eat dirt.
Genesis 3:15?
No. The one you were referring to.
Okay, 60.
25.
65:25?
Yeah.
Well, when is the curse lifted?
That specifically says, dust shall be the serpent's food. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, says Yahweh.
Yeah, but in Genesis 3:15, it also says eat dirt, so it's hard to know what that means.
Whether it's literal or symbolic is what you're saying.
No, I don't know that that's what I'm saying necessarily, I just don't know what it means.
Did you want to say something, Levi?
So I noticed there was a very special word being the. Wait. The serpent, not. It doesn't say,
Not any old serpent, the serpent.
yeah,
The serpent.
yeah.
And where did you notice that? In your dad's Bible, I see.
25. Also says the lion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I don't know if it's specific.
it's not, it's probably, that's a good observation, though. Excellent observation, Levi. Excellent job. But it's probably not referring to Satan or any specific serpent. It's because of the context, you can see it's probably talking about serpents in general. Yeah. But great job. Great job.
It might also mean all the serpents.
Might also what?
It could be all the serpents.
Yeah, all the serpents, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Okay,
Then what does the end of verse 25, they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. That almost draws it right back to within the temple itself.
yeah, right.
So.
or on Temple
Is
Mount.
that the only place where this?
On Temple Mount.
Yeah.
Temple Mountain is much bigger than,
So is this the only thing, is this the only place that?
well, obviously not, because it talks about, a little child being able to play near their dens and stick their hand in their den and not be hurt them. So obviously it has to do with the fact that serpents are not going to be poisonous and bite any longer and hurt with their bite. But, the whole food thing, that's,
Well, I would guess then they're crawling along the ground and eating vermin that are there, rotting bodies, I mean, who knows?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's a really, really interesting set of observations regarding snakes.
Your favorite.
Yeah, my favorite. Okay, good job. Good stuff here. What else? We haven't,
I always used to get hung up on in Isaiah 65, when I kind of first read this stuff, but where it kind of talks about I create a new heavens and a new earth.
yeah,
That
that's
phrase-
probably a reference to the eternal state.
Like in Isaiah 65, but then he goes to talk about the Messianic kingdom.
Right,
So I
right.
think I always used to think like, this doesn't make sense because they talk about death and they talk about all these other things. But I think I was reading somewhere too, like Isaiah, when he uses that phrase, he's talking, obviously about the Messianic kingdom, the millennial kingdom, because that's all he was given to see. John was given the revelation of beyond.
Of there being separate, there
Right.
being two separate periods,
Right.
right. But Isaiah wouldn't have seen
Yeah,
the way John saw it.
right,
But even
Yep.
the millennial kingdom is a building block of
It
the
is.
heavens and earth.
right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a transition.
Yeah,
It's a preliminary stage
yeah.
of his eternal kingdom.
But I think
And-
there's a
and
lot of
the
people that read that.
Isaiah saw the first coming and the second coming together too,
Right,
with no distinction between them. So him seeing the eternal state and the millennial kingdom in one, vision into the future is not hard to understand.
right.
I think too that we have to keep in mind that not everything is sequential.
Right,
It's not,
right,
it's not exactly sequential. He might be making a summary statement.
Yep.
Now he's talking about some of those things that won't be remembered,
right,
that kind of thing.
right. But later revelation helps us understand what Isaiah is saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, progressive revelation informs earlier revelation, yeah. But unlike Reformed people,
That's
it doesn't
the thing.
change it.
See,
It
I think
doesn't
a lot of
change
them
what
read-
the earlier
read that,
passage
though.
said.
Yeah, a lot of them
It just
read that
informs
into,
it.
like, this is
Yeah.
just, this
Right.
is that, and that's where a lot of those, that
Right.
camp.
Right. Okay. Mark, will you close in prayer for us, please?
Sure. Heavenly Father, I just thank you and praise you for your word and the fact that it's been written so long ago and yet perfectly preserved and transmitted through the ages. Thank you for the privilege of studying it every Sunday morning. And I just pray, Father, that you'd help us to apply the truths we learn in your word. And I pray that the remainder of this day would be found pleasing in your sight. And in the very precious and matchless name of Jesus, I pray.